Before I review this one, I do want to ask a hypothetical question that I just want you to entertain in the back of your head. And it's fine if you disagree with me. I just think you should genuinely ask yourself this. If you were a creative on some sort of project, let's say, that hundreds, maybe even thousands of people worked on, and you spent, let's say, a year of your life on this, maybe several years, and then this project finally sees the light of day, it finally comes out, and you want to hear what people have to say about it, good or bad, but you don't really get to because the entire conversation ends up being molded around either one specific aspect of production or the political views of just one person who worked on the film. And every single thing that was said about the film, or not necessarily a film, just any project, had to be filtered through that. Would that not be kind of devastating? Would that not irritate you? Would that not like kind of be viscerally upsetting? Because that's kind of what's happened here. All of the conversation around Ice Cream Man is about the use of generative AI in its production, which I have a lot of opinions about, and I have a lot of opinions about the discussion about it, but I'm going to try to do that in the back half so it doesn't overtake the video. Or Eli Roth's views on certain things, and I'm not necessarily in line with anything that he said, but we seem to have really embraced auteur theory again in the 2020s, where people seem to think that a film is entirely driven by the vision of one person, that the director is entirely responsible for everything, and that if the director, is a certain type of person, you got to boycott the film. I'm not saying you can't boycott films over, you can have moral standards, but we also seem to be implying that the director knows everything about a production, how everything is made. They know the intricacies of the VFX. They know what's going where and how everything's being done. We are willing to place all of the blame on one person. Everything, every single person, every single piece of tech, every single thing has to be filtered into a wholly good or bad label with no room for nuance or discussion. And it all has to be this black and white thing driven by mob mentality that makes it very easy to farm engagement with clicks. And I don't think that's good for film criticism. I don't think it's good for artists. I don't think it is defending the arts, as some people would argue. Uh, I think it's something a little bit more nefarious than that, but I'll go into that later. So to review Ice Cream Man, this is a film directed by Eli Roth, who is known for making very schlocky, low-budget horror. I really did like his film Thanksgiving from a couple years ago. I thought that was very entertaining. I loved the practical effects in it. I know a lot of people are viscerally against gore. They don't like gore in movies. They think it's exploitive or will desensitize you to disturbing imagery. And there might be some truth to that. I do find gore interesting in movies just from a practical effects or a VFX standpoint. And there is a lot of practical effects in this movie, despite what the cultural conversation might suggest. This is a gore fest. This is a horror schlock gore fest. That is exactly what this film is. If that is what you want to see, you will get that. If you do not like those things, I would not suggest this film. I would suggest you do anything else because you're not going to like this. It is fully committed to being that. It knows what it is, and it commits to that. Basically, the plot of this film is that this man or spirit or whatever he may be is giving ice cream out to kids, and it is turning those kids evil. And then those kids are going out and killing adults brutally. That's the plot of the film. That makes up pretty much the entire runtime of the film. If you like to see campy gore with a plot like that, you'll get exactly what you want. I did have an overall fun time with this. There are several lines delivered by the child actors in the most stilted, cringe-inducing way possible, but it feels perfectly in line with this. This film actually has another fake trailer before it for at least at this point in time, a fake film. Eli Roth has had fake trailers later become real films. But that was interesting to see in the theater because I didn't realize what was going on at first because the movie hadn't started. It was still playing like the Regal ads and stuff, so it threw me off. But it was kind of a one-note joke. I do think that bit went on a little bit too long. And some will say that this film goes on a bit too long. I do think there are at least some interesting kills here. They're very colorful. This film has a very, very saturated color palette, which I love. I'm a simp for saturated colors, especially on the big screen. Lots of quite literally cotton candy colored visuals, lots of ice cream, lots of bright, vivid red blood. Now that being said, this film is pretty short, but it does kind of overstay its welcome a little bit. It does feel like we are just, continuing to find excuses to have children kill adults in goofy ways. I don't know if I would say any of our main child actors are necessarily good. But I don't know that they really need to be for this style of film. I still found it entertaining. They were engaging. They were just goofy enough to like keep their hold on me. The film does introduce a twist a little over halfway, maybe close to 2/3 of the way through its runtime. And then there is further twists on top of this twist that I won't spoil. I've seen some people really liked that, some people hated it. I did not like it at first. At the end, I kind of liked it a little bit more. Some people have reviewed this film very negatively because they feel it is an evil film. This is something that is going to leave a bad taste in your mouth. I won't say too much, but you go into this expecting, I don't know, every character to get their comeuppance or a clear moral through line. I wouldn't say you're going to get that. This is a bad taste film through and through, and it knows that, and it carries that all the way through. There is also a short post-credit scene. It was kind of funny. If you miss it, you didn't miss much. I guess I'll start talking about some of the stuff people have issues with. Obviously, a lot of the conversation is about the fact that Gen AI is in this film. People, especially online, viscerally hate generative AI. I have negative opinions about some of the ways it's used. I would consider myself neutral on it because I see positive ways that it's used too. And to be frank, I feel a lot of people are too ill-informed on the subject or not techno-literate enough to even really know what I'm talking about. I'm just going to give a quick example. I had someone recently ask me, they wanted a tool to upscale video, and I mentioned Topaz, which is the industry standard in like videography for upscaling video, make like 1080p look 4K or something. And they looked at it and they were like, this is AI, I can't use this. I was like, okay. They're like, how did we upscale before AI? I was like, they've been using AI for a while. I mean, we've had GAN since 2017. He's like, what is a GAN? Like, well, a GAN stands for Generative Adversarial Network. They've been using those for way before ChatGPT even came out to upscale images. Yeah, no clue what I was talking about. I mean, I guess you can go back to bicubic sampling if you want to upscale an image. It'll look like dog shit, but you can do it that way. Then it's just algorithms and not Gen AI. I don't know. We've cultivated this moral Puritan culture around it where people are like scared to even educate themselves on the subject, which is, I don't think, conducive to the arts. I don't think it's conducive to anything. I think it is just conducive to prideful declarations of ignorance, quite frankly. But there are absolutely shitty uses of it too. The biggest point of controversy for this film is the animated sequences. Eli Roth originally stated that he drew some cartoon loops and that he had done for the film to be reminiscent of this older style of like rubber hose animation, and that he then sent it off to a studio to have them like go over top of it and make it look better. Maybe he knew this was an AI studio, maybe he didn't. I don't think a director necessarily always knows everything. I don't think we know a lot about this film, and I'm not going to overconfidently declare that I do, because I don't. I don't like when influencers just confidently state something as fact, oftentimes being blatantly wrong about it. There is also at least one shot involving a flashback scene that I am fairly confident also has Gen AI involved somewhere in the process, because it looked very distorted. Now, it could just be a surreal visual, and I'm entirely wrong, but it definitely looked that way to me. I think Gen AI is bad if your audience can tell that you use Gen AI and it looks like shit. If you're using it to that degree where it becomes apparent that an image is generated and it looks ugly, Yes, I would say that's a bad use case. Now, I've also seen a lot of people talk about this film. They're talking about the blood splatter shots where, heads are being stepped on and blood is splattering. No, a lot of that is quite clearly practical FX. Some of it might have CGI on top of it. And I've noticed a trend now where people see bad CGI and they want to call that AI. It's the lazy person's excuse now. That's AI. That's AI. That's AI. It used to be that's CGI. That's CGI. That's CGI. It used to be that's Photoshop. That's Photoshop. That's Photoshop. Even when something isn't. I'm not saying any of this to say like, oh, I think we should all be gung ho in the AI and the arts. I'm not saying that. I've been to art markets and I've seen like shit on the walls that was clearly just the first thing that was shit out by a computer and they're selling it for $30, $40. I have that same visceral disgust when I see something like that. But I understand that it is also used in ways like a tool. And when it's used like a tool, I think it is a tool. And it has been used as a tool, especially in VFX workflows, for well before ChatGPT came out, several years before. When people say it cannot and can never have a place in the arts, I am just baffled. It has turned into this hyper moral Puritan craze that is so baffling to me. I'm going to tell you a story. This is a true story. I was at a party and I was talking to this guy about movies. He spent 30 straight minutes, I'm not going to name him because this is technically illegal, telling me about a piracy server that he runs where he pirates a bunch of movies and they're on a Plex server. He went on for 30 straight minutes uninterrupted, and he kept asking me if I'd be willing to pay him $20 for access to his piracy farm. Because I guess he asked people to pay $20 to maintain the server costs or something. I didn't because I mean, I have a ton of physical media. I can afford movies right now. I have a bunch of streaming services. I'm not worried about that unless something is just exceptionally obscure and almost impossible to find. I can get it legally. But then after the 30 minutes of him hammering nonstop about this, we were talking about movies we had recently saw. The last movie I had seen was Late Night with the Devil, and he looked at my Letterbox review of it, and he was mad at me because I gave it 4 stars. I said I liked it overall. I thought it was pretty good. I had some criticism, but I liked the film. He said I thought it was a good film too, but you have to change that to half a star. I said because of the AI. And he said yes. There's generative AI in the movie, so you have to give it half a star. If you enable this, you're a bad person who doesn't care about artists. The fact that he had just spent 30 minutes talking about pirating every movie he had seen over the past year did not mean anything to like that was a complete non-issue for him. The fact that this indie film has 3 seconds total of generative imagery in him was the sickest sin he had ever heard to man. And I looked through his Letterbox notes. He has 5 stars for movies by Roman Polanski, a guy who provably raped a 13-year-old. That's not an issue for him. 3 seconds of generative AI is the worst fucking thing he has ever heard. It is demonic, it's satanic, and if you give that film that hundreds of people worked on more than half a star, you have single-handedly killed the arts. Coming from a guy who runs a piracy farm. This is a true story. This is like, I have genuinely interacted with multiple people like this. I do not understand how this specific thing has turned into this ridiculous of a conversation. Like, I don't get it. I don't get it at all. And I'm sure posting this online, I'll get tons of criticism and hate for saying anything vaguely not negative about AI. But I mean, if you're not willing to have people online be mad at you, then like, why are you even a critic in the first place? Then you're never gonna, say what you believe. You're just gonna repeat whatever the most upvoted comment on like a Reddit thread is. And at that point, I don't even get why you're doing it. And like with the Polanski thing, I think you can like a film by a bad person. Like I'm saying, films are made by lots of people. It's like wild to me that you can not have an issue with that, not have an issue with piracy, but 3 seconds of Gen AI in an indie film, it's a mid-budget, let's say a mid-budget film. I think true indie is like YouTube. A mid-budget film is like the worst thing you've ever seen. It's just baffling to me. Do I think Gen AI needed to be used here? No, I think they could have done everything without it. Have some projects used it in interesting ways? I'm sure. I'm sure a lot of projects have used it in hidden ways. Netflix admits that over 300 of their recent projects had Gen AI used, only 3 of which are disclosed. I think a lot of people don't realize VFX already uses a lot of tools that would be considered Gen AI. If you use shot extension at the end of a shot in Premiere to make it a second longer to change the timing of your edit, that would be Gen AI. A lot of context aware tools in Photoshop now use Gen AI. You're extending the frame based on imagery that you have. And a lot of software, well before Gen AI was even a thing, was also trained off the works of others. This isn't really a new thing. EBSynth, the software that Joel Haber uses to make his videos, was literally initially demoed. Now it's not Gen AI, it's machine learning. But that tool was initially demoed as being able to rip off Vincent van Gogh's style and apply it to a moving image based on input frames. Like this, a lot of the conversation is weird to me because a lot of the criticisms of it have already existed for older tools, and a lot of what it is has already been used long before there were any criticisms of it. But I think people aren't really willing enough to engage with the art form enough to learn that and actually get the history here. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be critical of AI. I think people should. It's just is calling it the anti-AI movement is a little ridiculous to me, like an anti-car movement, an anti-computer movement. I agree all of those things have had very negative use cases. They also have a lot of positive use cases. I feel similarly about the Hank Green situation. That's a creator I actually have a lot of respect for because he does issue corrections when he's wrong. He does say when he's made a mistake. Admittedly, in this recent controversy, he did take information from an AI that was incorrect and he put it in the video. I think that is something he should get pushback for. But now I've seen people saying he could never use it for research at all, which is ridiculous to me because the people at that level, people at the collegiate and post-collegiate level that are using it for research are not taking what the AI bot says. They're using it as a context-aware search engine to find sources that they could not find with normal keyword logging. I think that's a perfectly valid use. I used it twice in my movie series. I didn't take anything from the AI, but there were 2 bits of information that I couldn't verify on Wikipedia because the links were dead. Well, one link was dead and one link didn't actually say what the information that was sourced from it said. And I wanted to prove that both of these claims were true. And I tried all kinds of things to Google it, but I couldn't find anything. Then I tried ChatGPT and I gave it the context and I was like, can you find anything on the web anywhere from a reputable source that would verify this? And it did. It found me 2 sources. And then I didn't read what I looked past, I ignored it. I found the sources that it found, and I went back and verified that those sources were reputable. In that instance, it was a very useful tool for me to validate the research. And it's not like I'm accepting the first thing that was spit out by a bot. I'm just using it to do something that I previously couldn't with a search engine. And I feel like there are very similar things in VFX, but people are not technical enough for me to even like explain it to them, and they're not willing to engage enough to even learn about that. It becomes this all or nothing hyper moral Puritan thing, which is not conducive or helpful to anybody. So I mean, I hope people do remain critical of AI. I just hope that they actually educate themselves in a way where they're not so easily dismissed by people who are in the industry or people who are in favor of it, because you want to mold it in a way that actually, makes sense rather than just nonsense. Like this post was the top of my Reddit feed yesterday from the anti-AI subreddit. It's a post saying LLMs can never do math. And if you look at it, it has ChatGPT 4.0, a model which you can't even access. I think it's been closed for over 2 years at this point. This is a 2+ year old model that they're using to make this point. And yes, that is bad at math, but they're literally posting this at the same time where if you go into the math subreddit, they're talking about how these LLMs are now finding breakthroughs in the erdos problems, some of which are like 80+ years old, unsolved by mathematicians. So that kind of denialism, it just makes you look like an idiot. Like, you could be advocating for a cause here. You could be having actual like benefits to what you're saying. But instead you have such denialism and moral puritanism, black and white absolutism, that you're not doing anything but discrediting a movement. Like, that's literally all they're doing. And I probably have spent way too, I probably should not have attached so much of my thoughts on this subject to this movie in particular, which is low effort horror schlock. Um, this was never going to be that great in the first place. Probably could have picked a better thing to talk about all this, but it was the thing at the moment. And it's the first thing that's really come up with it. Well, I've had this on my channel, so I thought I'd talk about it. I know Stop That Train from earlier this year also had Gen AI in it. I'm sure several films have, and people just don't know about it. I mean, the Corridor Crew talked about in their breakdown of Sinners. Apparently, the team mentions generative imagery in some aspect. I don't know. But you ask Brian Coogler, he says he hates generative AI. Directors often don't know what the hell's going into their films. They're not necessarily the most technical people, and the most vocal people online certainly aren't either. I give Ice Cream Man a 3 out of 6. I thought it was fun for what it is. It is what it is.
3 out of 6.
Jen and I have a lot more to say about. I'm not saying that it's like this great thing or anything. I'm just saying it has uses, and I wish people, if they're going to be vocal about it, they should learn about it, and at least criticize it correctly, so their criticisms can actually contribute to the goals that they're advocating for, rather than just kind of making their movement look dumb as fuck. Is my thoughts on the subject. And I do wish that when we have creative projects made by multiple people, that those people get a chance to have their projects seen and talked about for what it actually is, rather than always overshadowed by these other conversations. I realize I spent way more time on that than I did on the movie, so I'm guilty of what I'm criticizing. Uh, but I'm a hypocrite.